Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, Deep Space Nine, Cardassians. No, it's not the Kardashians, it's Cardassians. So, hey, maybe that'll be a special episode. Speaking of special episodes, you know, we see our super special exclusive episodes, coming up, Patreon member, patreon.com/IABD. Yeah, maybe we'll watch the Kardashians. I've never seen an episode, and I'm not trying to be high and mighty. You know that. You know how base my watching is. That's a way to support the network. And hey, maybe you can be the one to suggest it once you become a Patreon member. VIP is what you will be. Kind of like the folks in this episode. Deep Space Nine, Cardassians. It's all been trekked before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Some of us are here.
This is Stephen.
Jimmy-Jerome, and we have a brand new guest, as Patreon viewers can see. Megan Overholt has joined us. Welcome,
Hello.
Megan.
Thank you.
As I told you before the podcast, we always ask newbies what their Trek background is. So what is your Trek background?
Okay, well, I pretty much watched it with my dad. It was something he really enjoyed, and I would find it to be something that we could watch together and talk about. And, you know, I had a friend in high school who was also into it, so that kind of kept it going. And I also have an aunt who has like probably all of it on VHS, which I probably shouldn't admit, but she taped it all religiously from television.
I think the statute of limitation is probably expired by now.
I definitely taped some episodes back in the day. I mean, they were reruns, but I still taped them.
Yeah. And you said you watched the original on Next Gen with your dad?
Yes.
And then just a little bit of Voyager and DS9 here and there?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you're well versed in the old stuff.
Hopefully.
I mean, we already did the original series, and for the most part, found it great. I mean, it was uneven.
Course.
It was uneven, but it was solid as a show overall. There were some really high points in that series. So today, we're talking the Deep Space Nine episode, Cardassians.
Yes.
What is your first impression of the episode?
Child bites.
Child bites.
Yeah, literally. The first impression. Maybe it's because I ended up watching it in two segments. I wasn't as I felt like I wasn't as drawn in as I should have been. Like, it's a bunch of poor orphan kids, more or less. And then there's other dark aspects. Garrick and Bashir are a ton of fun. Bashir practicing law. He's the perfect Jewish husband. He's a lawyer and he's a doctor. Yeah, I ended up liking it. I know that I loved it, but I thought I would get more broken up about it, and maybe that's my Kake O'Brien bias coming through. Although I like them more than I ever have, but I also they're also spoiler alert, my annoying for the episode, just because they always are. So
I mean, I liked it. I thought we started to get into some of the politics of the occupation and political machinations of the government versus the civilian government versus the military. And I dig when we get into the politics, whether it be Bajoran or Cardassian politics. I don't know that the acting was super strong from our guest stars, unfortunately, but I thought the story overall was a really good concept, even if it wasn't quite executed as well as I would have liked.
Are you talking about the child acting?
Yeah, I mean, and Keiko, of course, is not great. And but mostly the child, mostly Rogel.
Okay.
I was not, I mean, he wasn't bad. He just wasn't good. We are critical of child actors. The same way we're critical of any other actors. We don't treat them with kid gloves just because they're children. They get our honest opinions of their acting abilities. So this episode starts. One of the first things we see is Garrick, which was so exciting because he was only in one episode of season 1, like near the beginning. And this is only his second appearance. And I love Garrick, so I was super excited to see him back.
Yeah, I wrote down live action meme.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've had the episode that's that mean yet. Or we would be able to tell anyway. But
I mean, all episodes are that meme.
That's true.
Even this one, especially this one.
Yeah.
So
Garrick is in a full fashion, loving all of the threads. Kind of girl bossing.
Well, he's a tailor, so
just girl bossing it a little bit with the mixed thrift, which is just exquisite.
They
I'm glad we have a fashion expert here. There you go. I was about to go to my
Expert,
first-
not so much.
we
someone who
do
knows more than us.
we do always talk about the fashion of the
My
episode.
first
so.
fashion of the episode. What are those people behind them wearing? Did you notice those two aliens behind them? They look like they're wearing trash cans on their head.
Yeah, there was a lot of really great, just random alien life forms in the background. It's just like they went all out for the background.
I couldn't tell if it was part of them or that race or species or those people from part of one planet.
Were they
those
partying
people-
too hard and they had trash cans on their head because they were just partying too hard? Who knows?
The Deep Space Nine is usually pretty good about the background and providing all the different aliens. They certainly spent a lot more on makeup for aliens than the other shows did.
Yeah, it's good, definitely.
What I liked about the conversation between Garrick and Bashir, because we haven't seen Garrick since early in season 1, so it's been like a whole year, is they established that he and Bashir have gotten together regularly. So we know this relationship between them has been built up over the last year. And there's several comments about, oh, doctor, you always do this, or you always think I'm a spy. The very first episode he appeared in last year, Bashir was like, he's a spy. And he was, he denied it, of course. He's a simple tailor, but that was already established that he had Bashir jumping through hoops, and he just messes with Bashir, which is great. Garrick talks about serving, his expertise and willingness to serve are some of his traits, but he's not a spy. He's just plain simple Garrick, as he always says. And then we see a Cardassian youth come in with a Bajoran father. The youth's name is Ruggel, played by Vidal Peterson, who is best known for, according to IMDb, this one role in this one episode, as well as the movie Something Wicked This Way Comes, the TV miniseries The Thornbirds, which he only appeared in one episode, and 3 episodes of Mork and Mindy as the Elder, which would have been prior to this, when he was very young. So this was actually his last credit. He only has 13 credits. He was previously in an episode of The Next Generation, way back in season 5, Unification Part 2. He played one of the Romulans, I believe. So not well known, and that maybe that's why he only has 13 credits, because not that impressive. But it was odd to see him come in with a Bajoran father, and immediately your heckles are up like, what's going on there? And so are Garrick's, which is why Garrick goes over to him and gets bitten pretty severely.
First of all, I kind of applaud the boy for stranger danger.
Garrick is harmless. He's just a plain simple tailor. I
And
don't
it escalated so quickly. Like,
did.
maybe first, hey buddy, why are you touching me? Then bite.
Well, I think Garrick approached him as he would another Cardassian. Garrick would not approach a Bajoran in the same manner. Had he approached him as he would approach a Bajoran, it might have gone better.
Oh, I'm not victim blaming. The bite was just, wow.
Vicious.
I wrote, don't call me handsome. Nobody calls me handsome. Back off.
So Bashir goes up to Ops, and you notice he jumps out of the turbo lift before it gets all the way up to Ops. I think he does that frequently, but that can't be safe, right? I want to see the outtake where he tripped and face planted into Ops.
Honestly, you would think that safety by then would have progressed enough where the lift wouldn't open until the floor was level, but
But
obviously
the
they
Deep
still
Space
have issues in the future with mechanics.
But the Deep Space Nine lifts don't have doors.
Mm-hmm.
So unlike Next Gen.
I think DS9 is so far out there that the OSHA guys get there once every 3 or 4 years.
Cardassians don't even have OSHA.
Quark gets them drunk, and they don't do anything. It's like safety inspectors going to Vegas. They don't even do anything.
So before Bashir could even really fully fill in Cisco on what happened about the war orphan being raised, Ducat calls, our old friend Gol Ducat, and he calls and he already knows about it, which immediately it's like, who told him? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
My first thought was Garrick, but it's very clear that Garrick and Ducat do not communicate. And I knew that they hated each other, but my first thought watching this episode was like, well, it had to be Garrick because nobody else there would have called him. But he has spies on the promenade. He's got to, right? Or is he still watching security feeds?
And I was a little confused because I thought they were whatever. I guess that's just my generalizing Cardassians. They're all friends. They're all friends, right? They all hang out together.
Well, they do see each other at the Cardassian meetings.
Right. But Garrick explains it perfectly at the end of the episode, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. So we get the backstory that there were war orphans that the Cardassians left when they pulled out. and they have been raised by Bajorans, who, at least in the case of Rugal, has been raised to hate their own. We find out that Dukat claims, anyway, he wanted to take the war orphans with him because he was in charge of the pullout, but the civilian government would not let him.
Do you think it'd be hard to get people to hate Cardassians?
No.
Other than Garrick, is there one more like, you know what? Actually, we have said we respect Gul Dukat or whatever, but
I mean, I hate Gul Dukat, but I love to hate him.
Yeah,
he's evil.
Like maybe we like the acting, but
yeah.
I don't think it'd be that hard to get people to hate Cardassians.
I think they want to teach them to hate their culture and hate their where they come from, which is that in this case a bad thing? I don't know.
I mean, so from the Bajorans' perspective, that just spent decades fighting back against an enemy occupation, I can see where they stand of Cardassians are evil. But we've already seen, besides Garrick, other Cardassians in the series that aren't evil. And you can't blame the whole civilization for what their military did and their government did. If so, the whole world would be totally justified in hating us as Americans, honestly. And maybe they should hate us. But I do think you have to separate people from the culture.
Mm-hmm. And you want to present them with the information and let them make their own decision. Teach them judgment.
Right. I mean, because we had that great episode at the end of season 1, Duet, where we had a Cardassian who claimed to be a military war general because he felt so guilty about his low-level participation in the occupation that he was trying to pass himself off as an important person so they could execute him because that's how he felt he could make up best for what he did. And he was just he just did paperwork. He didn't do anything violent. So that is an example of a Cardassian that clearly has a conscience and a soul. And
you have never considered paperwork violent. You've never done paperwork correctly.
That's probably true. So Bashir is trying to get information about what's going on, and totally unbidden, the freighter captain that flew the Bajor and the kid there, which is probably who told Dukat what was going on, because I'm sure it was all arranged. I mean, that's pretty clear that Dukat arranged all this. There's only 2 other actors on the IMDb page besides the leads that have pictures, and one of them is Kotam Padar, which I thought was the father. And then
Kotan is Robert Mandan.
Yeah,
Zolan, I think you're right. I think
Zolan was probably alien captain, played by Dion Anderson, best known for Mr. Deeds, The Shawshank Redemption, 1 episode of The X-Files, and Dying Young. He has 70 credits. Last worked on Gilmore Girls back in the original run, so he hasn't been active in a while, although I do not see a death date on IMDb. But yeah, he's clearly stirring up trouble with what, by the end of the story, I take to be blatant lies. At the time, I believe him because it seems plausible, which is my racism against... I don't know if that's racism, that I assume the Bajorans hate the Cardassians enough that they would beat their children. I guess that is kind of racism. But at the same time, I feel like the Bajorans are justifying their hatred, but they shouldn't beat children because of it. So I don't know. Something in there. But my prejudice led me to immediately assume he was telling the truth. And this was going to be one of those, let's uncover the secret child beater stories, which I'm glad it wasn't.
And maybe that threw me off because I didn't make that link either. Wait a minute, they just presume that they must be abusive and they have to investigate. I guess that's true. That's how it works.
Well, they didn't lock him up, right? They just took the child away while they investigated, which I would think is such a serious allegation. Child services would do the same thing in the modern day, I would hope.
This will be my short legal corner of this week's episode, but yeah, I that is all it takes most of the time to at least get a temporary restraining order. Is just allege it, and I've actually made a couple of appearances in those, not at the initial, but as a follow up. No, let's get custody back, and I think I was successful both times. 2 for 2, batting 1,000. So I hope that does that count as an ad? I guess I'll up my Patreon contributions.
Find Stephen Woosley on the bus bench near you. No. I'm kidding. Yeah, so they take away the kid. They start investigation based on this lie. And they send the kid, Rugal, to stay with Keiko O'Brien. I mean, is that the best choice here? I'm not...
No.
Yes, she's a mother, so they would try, even though we didn't see Molly in this episode, she's a mother, she's the teacher of the children, so you would trust her around kids, of course. But at the same time, I understand Miles' hesitation of, hey, that kid bit somebody, why are you letting him in the house with our daughter? Even though when you hear the story, you realize that Molly's not in danger. But still, you don't know him. And I guess it's the same thing of I'm trying to think of like a foster parent. My parents were foster parents when I was a kid for a while. We took in a couple of kids from a bad situation for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, once you've been vetted and she's background checked, I'm sure, to be the teacher, it makes sense to take it in. It's just, it feels like there are plenty of people that don't have young children that you could be endangering by sending the Cardassian child to stay with you, and maybe pick somebody else until you know for sure that he's not violent since he just attacked somebody.
Doesn't O'Brien say he almost bit someone's hand off? That's hyperbole.
Yes.
That's the definition of hyperbole.
Well, but we know O'Brien is racist against Cardassians because of his history.
But I also think at this point that he's been told you're not in trouble when he just bit somebody. Why did he never get in trouble for biting somebody?
Garrick didn't choose to press charges.
Okay.
I assume.
I'll accept that.
Yeah. Garrick is very forgiving.
Well,
He's just a plain, simple tailor. He's not out to cause any trouble.
there is the question there of, did his parents raise him to bite people?
It seems so.
There's stranger danger and like, get away from me. And then there's, I'm going to bite anyone who gets too close to me like a dog.
Yes, because his foster father simply said, "But you're not in trouble." Way to go, son. Way to go.
Just to back up a second, is it Zolan that has all the pockets with the weird things in them?
I assume
like,
so.
It's like a Adventist calendar. What's the calendar? You open the
Advent calendar.
Advent calendar.
Advent, yeah, it's what it looked like with all the doors removed and just random things in it. That's my second fashion note, and my last one probably. But sorry, I skipped past that. And then is it O'Brien that says Cardassians are detail oriented?
I mean, Garrick. He said he's amused by Ducat because if you know anything about Cardassians, they pay attention to detail, which we do know.
And
so
this may be my racism or whatever, or tying this to a war, which we'll get into even more of that later. But is this an allusion to the Germans, the Nazis? Because people are always like, the Germans, very organized, especially when
they made the trains run on time. Yeah, the Cardassians made the trains run on time.
We talked about this. Yeah,
I mean, the occupation is clearly
very organized.
Yeah,
very organized.
The occupation is clearly related to World War II, at least in some part, or draws from that experience.
I'm shocked that Cake O'Brien are fighting. So
they're always fighting.
Yeah.
So
it's more of a disagreement, but still.
When Sisko takes the kid away from Proka Migdal is the father, played by Terrence Evans. No picture on IMDb.
So I can't believe it took me.
I was looking at Memory Alpha to see who the characters were. He's best known for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2006 sequel, as well as the 2003 version of the original, plus Terminator 2 Judgment Day, where he played tanker truck driver, and the movie Crocodile, which never heard of. He's got 76 credits.
He was in Fletch. He's the guy who shoots out Fletch's back window. I remember that part.
Looks like he died 8 years ago, so no longer active. It says he's credited in 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine, but the second one was a first season episode, totally different character. He was in Progress.
This is unfortunately very timely. He was also played a bus driver in What's Love Got to Do with It?
Oh,
rest in peace, Tina Turner.
Yeah. So. 6 months ago when she died.
Right.
Or today, if you're here when we're recording this, which is just the 3 of us. Sisko gives him a really long look as he leaves. And I think that's Sisko measuring him, right? Because Sisko's a father, which obviously, not that you have to be a father to be in charge of the situation or anything, but I think it gives him an insight he would not have, that Picard would not have in the situation, for instance.
Which we get into later when they're like, they need an arbitrator. And they're like, well, you're a dad.
Yeah.
Trek captains always end up being arbitrators.
They do.
I guess
that's part of the job description. He's not a captain, though. He's only a commander.
Oh, that's true. Do you see captains on Earth get into that situation?
I don't know. I mean, our military has its own judicial system, so probably not.
I guess Trek captains, as we've talked about a lot, especially with Picard, they're ambassadors and they're making the first visit to new worlds. We're not sending anyone in the Navy these days. No one's making first contact on planet Earth these days.
Right. Yeah, they're making first contact or second contact in the case of the California class in lower deck.
However, you would think that at this point, the agency that allowed for the adoption to go ahead in the first place would be involved at this point.
That's true. But they're not. They don't even have records. that they have access to.
No, they just didn't bother to cast it. No.
Well, I mean, we saw the place where he was adopted from. I think it's just in this situation, coming out of a war isn't the same thing as a fully functioning system.
Mm-hmm.
Bashir interrupts the call to Dukat.
Is that what you just said? They didn't. Their computer didn't work.
The computer didn't work.
Computers don't work.
Well,
and
yeah. So Bashir interrupts the call to Dukat to expose him that he was in charge of the withdrawal and everything. I like Sisko's command approach in this episode, where first of all he just sits back amused and lets it play out just to kind of see what was going on. But then as soon as they get off the call, he dresses down Bashir and he's like, you did the right thing, but don't do it again, basically, which is I just like Sisko's command style. It's very different than Kirk or Picard's, for sure. The Cardassian stew that Keiko makes them, this begs the question yet again of, you have replicators. Why do you have to have one dish for the family? Why can't everybody choose what they want to eat themselves? Why do they all have to eat the Cardassian stew just because Rugel's going to have the Cardassian stew?
I felt like they're not. O'Brien's definitely not a foodie. He was. No. I mean, he took one bite and that was it. Then he probably had some. I was gonna say mashers and bangers. That's not right.
Bangers and mash.
The thing is, like, it's a chance to, help share in the experience. Look, we're all doing it. This is and consequently hate it. And then they bonded over that. So see, it facilitated some kind of
It was
diversity and inclusion situation.
Kind of a backdoor kind of, we both hate this thing.
Yeah.
Didn't O'Brien not like Keiko's Japanese
That's what I was just going to say. We've seen him not like her cooking before, and it's like, just let him replicate his own food if he doesn't want to eat what you're serving him. Was a Next Gen episode where when they first got married, she was replicating him dinner, and he was like, I don't like this. O'Brien talks to Rugel, and while we know O'Brien is super racist against Cardassians, he seems to be able to set that aside with this kid and break down that barrier really quickly. That by the end of the episode, he's already an advocate for the kid, which is good. He's good becoming of a Starfleet officer, but it seems odd that they frequently go back to the well against O'Brien's racist against Cardassians, but it only takes one conversation to erase it in this particular individual's case. I did like O'Brien being called on the spot, though, and saying you can't judge a whole race with a broad brush, because O'Brien's previous military experience against the Cardassians.
O'Brien should be used to it, guys. He's Irish, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he gets sick of people talking about what a drunk he is, a fighting drunk he is. I mean, but he is.
Yeah, I mean, not all Irishmen are drunks, just O'Brien. But, if you were married to Keiko, you'd probably be a drunk too. And vice versa. If you were married to Miles, you'd probably, they both have reason to be unhappy in their marriage. They just seem like a terrible couple. They just really don't seem like they're in love. So speaking of couples, but good this time, Bashir wakes up and Garrick's in his room, and Bashir does not panic because Garrick's probably a frequent nighttime visitor in Bashir's bedroom, I assume, based on the fan headcanon of the relationship between the two of them that never made it on screen.
Yeah.
I buy it. I think they had a relationship. I think they had a sexual relationship, Bashir and Garrick. I just think in the 90s they couldn't put it on TV. If the show was today, we would have seen it, unfortunately.
Yeah. That was what I was getting, yeah.
I mean, I thought they were the most fun landing party we've had in a long time.
Well, the request for the runabout was great. The Sisko in the middle of the night where he's like, can I borrow a runabout? Why? Garrick wants one. Okay, will one runabout be enough?
I wrote that down. I love that line. That was fantastic. That made me laugh very, very much.
I mean, it clearly was sarcastic, but I appreciated it. So then, we're told a high-ranking politician, and that's who Kotan Padar is, played by Robert Mandan. He was the high-ranking Cardassian politician, best known for the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Love that movie. Soap, the television show, did 76 episodes, and Zapped, and this role, 120 credits.
Zapped.
So I've never seen Zapped, but I love Best Little Whorehouse, where he plays a senator.
I forgot about that, but yeah, he's great. He's the patriarch of one of the families in Soap. Richard Mulligan's the dad and the other.
This is unfortunately his only Trek credit.
Bah.
So we won't.
I was excited to see him though.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this predated it, but it started feeling a little Elian Gonzalez.
That was during W's presidency, so that was later.
Okay. Yeah. So then I thought, well, maybe this is kind of a Bosnia-Herzegovina, the collapse of Yugoslavia kind of thing, where you had a lot more of these orphans and that kind of stuff. It could even be going all the way back to, I guess, any war-torn place where there's invaders or occupiers.
I think war orphans have been a common theme for lots of wars, a common consequence.
And maybe this goes, I don't know if this goes to the acting or just that we start off with this kid biting somebody, or he's just a sullen teenager. But when they go to the orphanage and the young girl comes out and is like, "Are you going to take us?" And he's like, "I can't." I thought she was great, and that was the most affecting part. The part that I guess that got my heart the most in the episode. I enjoyed the whole Garrick and Bashir stuff, but that part I thought, okay, now you got me. You got me a little bit. But
Garrick walks this line that I love, because you never know where he stands exactly. But when she talks about being in the underground, the woman running the orphanage, he's like, "Oh, perhaps we have met." And it's like, do you mean you helped the underground, or do you mean that the underground was fighting against you? It's not clear.
I love that. I very much love that line. That was very, very good.
Yeah. I like that Garrick fixes the computer very quickly to get the information, which again reinforces the fact that he's not just a simple tailor, but
it's just like sewing a button.
It is. I mean, I think even by the end of Garrick's first episode last season, we knew he was a spy. I think he's okay with everybody knowing he's a spy. He's just not going to go into the details, because it makes them trust him more in these situations, to have them a little bit scared of him and a little suspicious of him. So it works in his favor. But yeah, I don't think he's really trying to hide, even though he protests. He's got a facade to keep up. Garrick is one of my absolute favorite characters in all of Trek. So, absolutely. Cisco back on the station can't find the accuser, Zolan. So that's right there a suspicious. And this is why I'm pretty sure Zolan was Gul Dukat's puppet, or paid off to do this in the first place.
He's an instigator, that guy.
Yeah.
He's Antifa, right? Isn't that what those guys are?
I think he's just a mercenary. I think he just did what he was paid to do.
Yeah.
I like Garrick's line of, "I believe in coincidences, I just don't trust them," which was fun and accurate. The whole story of Rugal, he last saw his father at the age of 4. And that's a really affecting story, because I feel like we've heard of these like kidnap victims that are like living in somebody's basement for 10 years. Not that it's a common thing, but we've heard of this and trying to reunite them with their families, but they have the Stockholm syndrome. And I know this isn't Stockholm syndrome, but it's very easy to see how a kid raised from the age of 4 by a different father for 8 years will have no memory of where he came from.
Or people who were raised by their aunt, who they thought was their mother or their grandmother.
And at this point, I did not know who I was hoping would win the custody battle, because the father has every right to take his son back. Right. But if his son doesn't remember him, I guess the argument is, if the Bajorans had been kidnappers, this would have been a different story. Then it's clear. You take him away, you send him back to his father, because they should have never had him in the first place. But in this case, granted, it was not his father's fault. This was machinations by Dukat even then, 8 years ago, to orchestrate getting this son stolen so he could use him as leverage down the road, because the Cardassians think ahead. But because the Bajoran parents did nothing wrong and they loved the kid, you almost wanted to be like, let the kid decide. And I don't blame Cisco for coming down where he did, but it really left me wondering what the right choice was in this decision. I didn't envy Cisco's challenge of figuring that out.
Yeah, I agree, because I was thinking, okay, so will the son be known, or are they going to hide him so it doesn't hurt the dad's political career? So then what kind of existence is that, to sit around where you don't like where you are, you hate the food, and nobody knows you exist, you have no social life. Whereas before, you had these great memories of a father who taught you how to swim and things like that. It was really, to me, it was really a harsh choice.
It was, and you could tell that his Cardassian father really loved him, cared about him, would treat him well.
Yeah, but you could go into that whole, if I love you, I'll do what's best for you.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So
yeah, I don't think there was a right answer in this situation, and I appreciate the writers for tackling it. This was a story by Gene Wolande and John Wright, teleplay by James Crocker. John Wright, this is his only credit on IMDb. And Gene Woland has 3 episodes of Carnival on HBO, 1 episode of Sons of Anarchy. Oh, that's as an actor. Sorry, he's primarily an actor. He has 32 acting credits. He only has 3 writing credits. An episode of The Wonder Years, this, and a short called 3 Shots. And then James Crocker, who they handed the teleplay over to, wrote 26 episodes of DS9, 14 of The Twilight Zone. So they took the story and handed it over to somebody more experienced.
Yeah, I think either way he decides it. I don't think any of us are like, all right, I feel good about this now. I think a simpler way would be like, oh, we find out. And I thought that's what they were going to do, is like, one of these guys is a total a-hole. And they didn't go that way. So I appreciate that too.
Or they ended on, it's being decided, they're still working that out. So we don't actually have to make a decision on whether this was the right choice or not.
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. James Crocker has 27 credits on DS9 as a producer. As a writer, he has 3 teleplay by and 3 story by credits. So this is the first of the episodes he actually wrote. He actually wrote the very next episode of DS9 as well. So we'll be able to compare that and see if it's better. Although I liked this, so I'm not knocking him. Directed by one of our regulars, Cliff Bull.
Have we seen Gul Dukat on his feet before? Not just on a video screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Maybe
in a TNG episode?
No, because Dukat wasn't in TNG, but he played a different character, the one with the facial hair in TNG,
okay.
the Cardassian.
Okay.
Maybe not. I thought he was in the pilot, but maybe he was just on the video screen.
I felt like we just always seen him from, the head up.
Huh. I don't know. That's a great question. I know we'll see him a lot more. He's in a ton of episodes, but
okay. I know we alluded to this earlier, but I do like him as a foil or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We learned that in Cardassia, on Cardassia, families are really important, that up to 4 generations live in one house, which was an interesting fact that was definitely not something we knew about them. But it really reinforces the family stuff.
4 families live in one house. In America, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that.
Okay. O'Brien, with him talking to Rogan so much and all that, do you think he's acting under Sisko's orders, or do you think this is just something he wants to do?
It felt genuine.
I think it was genuine either way.
Oh.
But do you think he was ordered to do it, or was this just something he took on himself to be an advocate?
I think he was being an advocate.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Right, but was he assigned to be an advocate?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that's for him to know.
Okay.
And for you to not that
it's necessarily important, but
I think, I don't know. I think he was just going to be housed there for the duration, and there wasn't a directive given. But could be wrong.
Every time they said the kid's name, Rugal, I thought they were going to say Rugula, which is a delicious. I was going to call it a Jewish confection. It isn't, but it originated in the Jewish communities of Poland. Made in the form of a crescent by rolling a triangle dough around a filling. Usually, you can have any kind of filling, but usually it's the ones I like are chocolate. They were created by the Ashkenazi Jews, so it just made me hungry every time they said it. So that's, oh my God.
I mean, or you could think of arugula, the lettuce, the leafy green.
Oh,
one of my rabbit's favorite lettuce.
I did not know.
Arugula. Wait, that's something.
I do know arugula.
Just kidding. That wasn't arugula. That was Ricola.
Yes.
Yes. I alluded to this earlier, but I very much enjoyed Bashir for the prosecution, including his whole. Well, whatever Dukat said. Well, I have the transcript in front of me, but that's not. But kind of his. Well, I presumed you would say that, but what I really meant to ask you was this. It's like, I think I have you now. Yeah, I very much enjoyed that. I love the redemption arc that Bashir's on. Redemption for us. It's people that hated him for a while.
He was so awful through most of the first season. It's nice to see him not be an awful character anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because Dukat's like, is there a question? The question is whether or not this officer deliberately left the son of Kotan Padar at the relocation center.
Padar, despite being political enemies with Dukat, seems very hesitant to publicly go against him, which I guess is a testament to Dukat's power.
Yeah.
They mentioned that Rugal was actually had connections to Tarek Noor and everything, because that's what Dukat was in command. Tarek Noor, of course, being Deep Space Nine. We haven't heard that term in a while, but pretty well known that was
so
its original
Tarek
name.
means deep space and Nor means 9. Is that how that works?
I don't think so, because we see another Cardassian station down the road called Epoch Nor. So I think Nor is the station part of it.
Okay, I thought they were all just had 9 on.
No, I mean, I don't know what the translation would be in English, or it says
Do you think
Nor is a space station.
I know there's lots of people on our planet that speak Klingon. Is there anyone that speaks Cardassian?
Look, Googling this, I did find sci-fi.stackexchange.com. They claim that Terok is their word for Bajor, and Nor is their word for thing. So Terok Nor literally means Bajor thing, a thing that is in orbit around Bajor.
That's a lot of
It was
detail.
in orbit before they moved it to the...
Very detailed.
I feel like that's dismissive. Like, it's a Bajoran thing. Who cares?
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Somebody-
I mean, it was built by slave labor, so I would think they would be dismissive of it. It was a slave place. It was a prison ship.
So were the pyramids, though. So,
True. But this was built for a very different purpose. This was a mining station. Gul Dukat purged the file, like really tried to cover his tracks. The thing about Gul Dukat is he is not dumb. He is very smart, and he almost succeeded in this plan. Like it was near. If Garrick had not taken it upon himself to hunt down the truth, Dukat would have been able to enact his plan. And
If he did not bite him,
Mm.
if Bruegel did not bite him,
I don't think Garrick was motivated by the bite. I think Garrick was motivated by the mystery. And as soon as he learned Dukat was part of it, he wanted to take Dukat down.
okay.
But
I'm just thinking
yeah.
then the bite would never be reported, so then they'd never be investigated, and they just go on their merry way.
I think if he didn't bite Garrick, it would have been something else, because I think it was they were very clearly sent to the station to stir something
He
up.
would have bit someone else.
Or
That's
even if
what
he
I
didn't
thought.
bite, I think even if he didn't bite, the freighter captain probably would have still reported to Bashir that the father is being abusive and kicking off the investigation, right?
that's what I thought you meant Jimmy-Jerome was. Well, if he hadn't bit him, it would have been something else. Setting the station on fire, doing drugs, all that kind of stuff.
Bad seed. Yeah.
Knocking up a
stuff.
Bajoran, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Garrick's smile when they catch Dukat in the middle of the trial is wonderful. I love Andy Robinson in that portrayal. So good. Sisko does allow Bashir to interrupt the trial, just like he allowed Bashir to interrupt the call. But I think it's telling that Garrick lets Bashir be the one that presents the evidence and just kind of sits back, because that's Garrick's style. He manipulates the pieces, but he doesn't want to be the face of whatever's going on. He likes to stay in the background, and that was very Garrick.
That's why they're such a good team.
It's true. Bashir loves the spotlight.
And I forgot it had been a whole year since we'd seen him, but I also really enjoyed him in this episode. And I constantly think about him being in the first Dirty Harry movie as the bad guy. And it's like, this guy's in showy roles, but you know what? Some people should be in showy roles, and he's great at it. So
he just really leans into the
different from that
deliciousness.
Yeah.
The deliciousness, flamboyancy of this character.
Yeah. I mean, if there's scenery, he's going to chew on it, and that's not necessarily always a bad thing. It's fantastic here. I would say he luxuriates in it. He doesn't chew it.
And we've mentioned Trek novels on this podcast a lot. And when Deep Space Nine ended, Andy Robinson wrote a novel called A Stitch in Time, which is one of the longer Star Trek novels that's been published. It's a thick book, but it's Garrick's story following the series. And it's fascinating. It's well written. It's wonderful. And I love that the actor spent so much time thinking about the character that he was able to really come up with what he does after the series. And it's a really good book. It was published officially through the Star Trek license. It wasn't some self-published whatever. So just glad to have him back in. Obviously, he was in the second episode of the series entirely, but he's in 4 episodes this season and much more in seasons 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, he's in 4 episodes this season. He'll be in more than 4 each season the rest of the series. So
I see that he hasn't
lots
been
more
in
Garrick to
Picard
come.
yet. So
What?
I see that he has not been in Picard yet. So
No, he has not been in Star Trek Picard. Though he and Bashir did a series of videos, a story, scripts. I think he wrote it, called Alone Together, a Deep Space Nine companion during the pandemic. they didn't have their makeup on, so he played it as a human, but he was playing Garrick, and it was Garrick and Bashir exchanging a series of subspace messages back and forth, reprising their roles. That came out in 2020. I watched them on YouTube or something, I think last year, and they were very entertaining and well thought out. I liked them a lot. So it was cool to see. Even without the makeup, it was very easy to picture him as Garrick again. It doesn't look like he did write those. I don't know who wrote them, but very easy to picture him. Cisco does give the sun back, and through the way everything goes down, the politician's reputation's saved, so there's really no penalty for anybody. I mean, even Ducat, he essentially gets away with it, even though it doesn't play out the way he wants. He's not going to be punished for it.
Except for the foster father who's sad and has lost his son.
Right. He loses.
Nah.
No, that's not a punishment, though, right? Like, no, that's awful. That's awful.
Yeah.
And the Cardassian father getting his kid back is not in for a picnic the next few years either.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, teenagers, am I right? These kids.
He would have been 12, so he was just going into the teenage period before he goes home. Because he was 4 when he was kidnapped, and that was 8 years ago. So
he's already biting people, and now you're going to expose them to, the Cardassian world, and that's it's just
next thing you know, he's going to be skateboarding.
See, there you go, hanging out past curfew.
Probably dating a Bajoran just to tick off his father.
Watching pornographic cinema.
Bajoran pornography, obviously.
Well, which is it's like Swedish, it's like Scandinavian porn. It's some of the dirtiest.
Actually, I think it's really religious. I think they stop and pray to the prophets in the middle of it.
Well, I consider that really dirty.
Guess it depends what you're into.
Exactly. I'm not kink shaming. I don't want to.
No, not at all. We know their medics can get down.
As a co-host of a Star Trek rewatch podcast, I can never kink shame anyone.
I mean, I don't do this as a kink, but I do enjoy it.
Just my alternate episode, which is Garrick and Bashir as a detective team traveling the galaxy, maybe occasionally going back in time. And if somebody could just at least do the Simon and Simon Magnum PI-esque opening, the opening of each episode, that'd be fantastic.
My alternate episode is just I get to be Garrick's friend and hang out with him all the time, and he sends me on his little spy missions because I'll be Bashir. I'll be his bottom. He's definitely the top. Come on. Oh, I did write down one more quote. I never tell the truth because I don't believe there is such a thing.
Yeah.
That was a good quote.
That was one that I rewound. I was like, what the hell did he just say? Yeah.
Speaking of ranking, who was the shady character this week?
Gul Dukat obviously was shady, but I also thought about Garrett because he's not as much fun as he is in the episode. I think he's pretty shady, including the way he wraps up the episode with his whole well, you know what? It's like the karma's on this table. It's right in front of you. And I rewound that. Like, did I miss something? So I was like, nope. That is all he said. I was like, did he say something more? Nope, that was it. And I mean, it's good. It's perfect. But so yeah, Garrick is my shady. I
gotta go Ducat. I get your reasoning with Garrick. While he is deceptive. He was doing it for the right reasons, so I don't know that I consider that shady in this case, but I could see the argument.
Well, we don't know what he's hiding yet. So.
Yeah. Megan, do you have an opinion?
I'd say Cisco. I want to know what he was distracted by outside of work to not really put in a lot of effort and to allow himself to be distracted and lose control of the situation. But then you can kind of just say as a life lesson, if you do lose control of a situation and you just go with it, things might just work out.
Yeah, sometimes.
But really, what was he distracted by? I'd like to know. It affected his performance, like at work, not acting wise, but at work. He just
maybe it was dealing with. It could have been dealing with a teenager. We didn't see Jake this episode, so we don't know what kind of trouble he was into.
Yeah,
God only knows who he was off fighting.
Yeah, he and Nog together, and Frankie has sharp teeth. So
sometimes the hands-off approach is the best thing, and things just work themselves out.
It's true.
Yeah.
Who was your annoyance this week?
I said it earlier, Kake O'Brien. For old time's sake.
Always for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to go with Rugal. I could not stand the kid, honestly. while I felt for the story and the parents involved, I really didn't care who he ended up with for his sake, because, sorry. I felt whoever ended up with him was the loser.
Well, yeah, again, and maybe this is just maybe I was biased against him or whatever, but I feel bad for this girl who I spent 5 seconds with in this episode, this orphan girl, because maybe she's biting people left and right too. She might be the worst orphan in the entire planet, but yeah, the other kid, actually the biting didn't even bother me. Well, a little bit, but he was sullen, that's for sure. Yeah. She just seemed sad. I felt for her.
Megan, who were you annoyed by?
I think the woman who was running the orphanage, just because she didn't even bother to get the computer fixed. Just a little bit
She
of
had requested to get
incompetence.
it
She needed to follow up. You know,
She may have sent a lot of follow up. She said they were low priority.
She did seem very what do you want? What do you want out of me? I just run an orphanage here.
I hear more about the kids in the records for sure.
That's difficult.
She's very close to the Annie character. Who's the woman?
Mrs. Hannigan?
Yeah.
And
if she'd sang,
and the bureaucracy is way more important than the welfare of the children. Paperwork.
Yes, she should have found somebody under the table to fix the computer if the government wasn't gonna do it, right?
Under the table, yeah, sure.
Who are we having a drink with?
I'm going to talk with legal genius Bashir and just talk about, hey man, good job. I really like what you did there. So,
I mean, I'm choosing Garrick, as I probably will just about every time he appears. But Megan,
I'll go with O'Brien.
He really put his racism aside and came around when it mattered.
And yeah, you can go have bangers and mash with him and go to the pub
and a pint
and just talk racistly about everybody.
I really just want to ask him what it tasted like.
The Cardassian stew.
I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't be excited about it either. I thought maybe though what he ate was like a little piece of shrimp, but it also had
blue food coloring
on it.
Maybe mashed potatoes mixed with food coloring.
Yeah.
And Jell-O.
Oh. Yeah,
it's Jell-O.
It's sounding worse and worse. I guess it did have some gelatinous qualities to it.
It's blue. Tasted blue.
So where do we want to rank the episode? Let's start with The Circle, which was the middle of the three-parter that opened the season. Better or worse than The Circle?
I'm going to blanket say I can't answer this because
you didn't watch the other four recently?
So The Circle was part 2, and we have that number 3.
Correct.
Okay.
I would put it above The Circle.
Going in, I would have said no, but I think you guys talked me into it. You guys helped me remember the better parts of the episode. So, yeah.
Above The Circle is The Siege, which was the ending of the three-parter. Mm-hmm. I think I go below that one, though.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Yeah. So it's 3 of 5 at the moment.
I did want to mention, this is a season of, I guess the first 3 episodes in context, those titles aren't that generic. Cardassians feels it's not quite ethics or liaisons or name your
justice.
Nothing is justice to be fair, but pretty generic.
Yeah, DS9 is not as generic in the titles in general, but yeah, Cardassians was a dumb title considering how many episodes of this show deal with Cardassians.
And maybe we talked about this before. I feel like a lot of these titles for TNG, and I guess it's bleeding in DS9, it feels like they were the working titles, and they're just like, screw it, let's just go with it. Whereas the original, and maybe again, the original series, you had a lot more sci-fi writers who were coming up with these. Yeah.
Is there in truth no beauty?
Is there in truth no beauty? For the world is hollow, and I have touched the sky.
Spectre of the Gun.
Spectre of the Gun. Yeah. So.
Yeah, this one they could have just named Family Bites.
Yeah, I feel like they probably just referred to it as The Office as the one with the Cardassians in it, and that's where it got its title. It's kind of like last season we had the episode called Dax, and that was certainly not Dax's best episode, and it was not very good. But last season we also had If Wishes Were Horses, In the Hands of the Prophets, so we got some good titles. We've got some great ones coming up. My favorite episode in DS9 is called In the Pale Moonlight, which I think is a pretty solid title.
Oh, that's classic. Yeah. Family Bites makes me think of Reality Bites, which I think came out around this time. Yeah. So, yeah, that'd be great. Ethan Hawke shows up. And he's pretty much, you know what? 1994 Ethan Hawke, was in Reality Bites was kind of like
And-
our boy here.
Winona Ryder, Star
Yeah.
Trek
Yeah.
connection there,
Ben Stiller, whose
Yeah.
production company is named after
After the original
the
series.
Return of the
Yeah.
Archon. Speaking of another great title, Red Hour Productions. So it's come full circle.
Next week, The Next Generation, Dark Page. While establishing diplomatic relations with an alien race called the Cairn, Deanna's mother experiences a mental breakdown and falls into a coma. And it seems like Deanna is the only one who is able to help her, even if her mother doesn't want it. Again, IMDb saying way too much in your episode descriptions. Until then, live long.
My best good boy, and prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's got the time?